Iran attacks Gulf Arab states, hitting civilian buildings and energy infrastructure, as well as U.S. bases. The impact of the American-Israeli strikes on the Islamic Republic is felt across the region. What does this mean for Gulf states' relations with Iran and with the U.S.? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. In the days since the U.S. and Israel began a joint military operation against Iran, the Islamic Republic has launched missiles and drones at Gulf Arab nations. Countries hosting U.S. bases have been in the line of fire, but civilian infrastructure has been hit too. Relations between Iran and Gulf states have varied since the Islamic Republic was born of the 1979 revolution. Some, such as Qatar and Oman, have enjoyed friendly ties, others less so. But all are under severe strain now, in the midst of events barely imaginable a week ago. Gulf countries pushed hard for a diplomatic solution from the nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran, a process shattered by U.S. and Israeli bombs on Saturday. So why has Iran decided to attack its neighbors? What are the implications for the region and for relations between Gulf states and Iran? And what about Gulf nations' alliances with the U.S.? We'll speak to our guest shortly, but first, this report from Perry Wilton.
Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Saudi Arabia, all targeted by Iran. In an address to the United Nations, the Gulf Cooperation Council condemned the strikes.
These attacks come at a time when mediation and de-escalation efforts are intensifying in Arab countries, prioritizing political solutions and dialogue. This escalation is therefore unjustified and undermines efforts to establish security and stability.
Terrorizing and targeting civilians in countries seeking peace is an abhorrent crime. This attack constitutes a flagrant violation and an unacceptable act in every respect.
Iran says it's targeting U.S. assets in response to the joint offensive by Israel and the U.S. that began on Saturday. All the countries hit house American military facilities. But Iran also struck energy infrastructure in Qatar, residential buildings in Bahrain, the Kuwaiti airport, and hotels in the UAE were also struck. Millions of foreign workers live in the Gulf, and the countries have long been considered safe havens in the Middle East, not least due to the US military presence. But now schools and businesses are closed. Flights are disrupted and people are leaving. The conflict has caused energy prices to soar. Strikes in Qatar and Saudi Arabia shut down gas and oil production. And Iran says the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Around 20% of global energy supplies passes through the narrow waterway. Qatar has had good relations with Iran in the past. They share the world's largest natural gas field. In a post on social media, former Prime Minister Sheikh Hamad bin Jassim bin Jabbar Al Thani said Qatar must not be dragged into a direct confrontation with Iran because it will deplete both countries' resources and give what he called many forces an opportunity to control us under the pretext of helping us. For every day the strikes continue, the costs are rising, both regionally and globally. Perry Wilton, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in our guests. From Riyadh, we're joined by Abdulaziz Alghashian, a senior non-resident fellow at the Gulf International Forum. Badr Saif is a professor at Kuwait University, specialising in Middle East history and politics. He joins us from Kuwait City. And Foad Izadi is in the Iranian capital. He's a professor in the Faculty of World Studies at the University of Tehran. A warm welcome to you all, and thanks so much for joining us today on Inside Story. Abdulaziz, let me start with you today. Gulf states have urged moderation throughout in the run-up to this current crisis, and they urged a diplomatic solution in the talks between the U.S. and Iran, which were brokered, of course, by Oman. Has that strategy been affected by these attacks, and could it change?
Well, firstly, Mohammed, thank you very much for having me in Ramadan Kareem. I think, unfortunately, we have entered into a juncture, in post this war. I think right now the process of the era of rapprochement, in my opinion, is dwindling, and we're entering into an era where I think it's going to be a very frosty position. In my opinion, I think the Saudi Arabia and other GCC states have invested a great deal of effort in diplomacy and rapprochement and de-escalation for the sake of trying to really share the region and share, I think, the prosperity in the region and create a calm and stable region. But I think the actions and the retaliations by, I think, the Iran regime now towards the Gulf against the backdrop of an immense amount of lobbying and effort for Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries to actually avoid this effort. They stood against this effort. And for them only to be attacked. They have given assurances time and again. And even in the recent statements, you could tell how outraged the Saudi officials are by calling these attacks cowardly. So I think, in my opinion, we've definitely entered into a post-rapprochement era. I won't say that diplomacy is over, but I think we're going to have a different mode of diplomacy, one that's about more robust posturing until we try to figure this out. I think it's going to be some time, and I hope I'm wrong.
Foad, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, he says Tehran doesn't want to escalate tensions with countries in the region. He also added, we are not fighting our neighboring countries. We are fighting American forces that are based in these countries. But how is that the case when Iran is now targeting the Gulf region's energy assets and energy infrastructure? And why has Iran decided to attack its neighbors in this way?
You know, Iran is facing very difficult times. The idea that a lot of people in Iran share is that the aim of the United States is to disintegrate Iran as a country, to balkanize Iran. They want to finish Iran, in their minds at least, and in practice if they can, so they can dominate the region. That's the ultimate goal of Netanyahu and Trump. Netanyahu has been able to use American soldiers to achieve what he has been wanting to achieve for many years, which is going to war with Iran using American resources. I'm sure he would want to do the same with the resources of other countries in this part of the world. We have had American reporters, Tucker Carlson, reporting that both Saudi Arabia and Qatar have arrested Mossad agents trying to blow up things in these countries and blame Iran for it. Iran, as our brothers in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia know, has been trying to have good relations with these countries. The rapprochement was taken seriously by both Saudi Arabia and Iran. They have been working to improve relations. The hope that the Iranian officials have is some level of understanding that their neighbor is going through difficult times, and they need to use the power that they have, which is less than the United States and Israel, to create cost to the United States and Israel. And they are hitting U.S. bases, legitimate targets. They're hitting hotels that house U.S. personnel, soldiers, legitimate target. They're hitting CIA headquarters. The CIA headquarters may be in office areas, not in bases, legitimate military targets. And I don't think Iran wants to damage the Saudi infrastructure. I haven't seen anybody suggesting that here. It could be the Israelis that are interested in that. The hope is that this war finishes. Iran didn't want to have this war. And Iran appreciates the efforts of the neighbors, especially the Omanis, Qataris, that worked very hard to avoid this. And hopefully, the United States realizes this was a big mistake and they could finish it because they started it.
Abdulaziz, I see that you want to react. I'll let you jump in just a minute. Let me go first to Badr. Badr, you heard what Foad was saying. They're saying that Iran wants to have neighborly relations with these countries in the Gulf. I want to ask you your reaction to that. And also I want to ask you, from your vantage point, are we in a new escalation phase now when it comes to Iran and Gulf countries, especially in light of Iran targeting energy infrastructure across the region?
Mohammed, let me start by offering my condolences on the many lost lives and injured persons, that we hope them safe recovery across the region and all countries impacted. This is an illegal US-Israeli war that shouldn't have happened. There was room for mediation and we were coming close to it thanks to Gulf mediators in the process. But let me also stress that this, as it is an illegal US-Israeli attack, it's also an illegal Iranian attack on Gulf cities across the board. Gulf cities and states that have tried very hard to avert war and to help our neighbors in Iran to overcome this obstacle. To try to confuse our cards and to say that this is intertwined with US interests is a misnomer. These are sovereign territories of the Gulf states. We have been very clear on our positions that their airspaces will not be used, nor will the bases be used. And hence, you saw the armada that came in from the US because of that. And that also strained some US relationships in the process, yet it was not taken into account. And the whole notion of hitting infrastructure like airports, hotels, normal residential areas that came through does not give us a sense of neighborly relations. This needs to be clarified, and I think it's unfortunate that the Iranian regime, whatever that's left of it now, we have a new face of it, is falling into the Israeli playbook. Israel wants us to join this war on the side of the US and Israel, and we are abstaining from doing that because we appreciate our neighbors in Iran and we see that there is a shared region that requires peace, common prosperity. So to try to mix the papers across the Gulf from the Iranian side is not helpful. We need calm. We need to come to peace. To your question on escalation, it seems to be the case. The Iranians are following a scorched earth strategy. They want everyone to go down with them. But look, it's not our war in the Gulf, and they need to realize this. And by them focusing on the Gulf states, at times even more than Israel and the US, does not bode well for the relationships. Now, on the issue of diplomacy, look, we never gave up on diplomacy, and we will go full force on diplomacy if need be. There is a new leadership in Iran today. We need to understand what kind of power structures are evolving. There is a decentralized command structure, so it could be that some of those attacks have been assigned even before the death of Khamenei. We need some calm and we need to trickle down into the roots of the issues. This is illegal on all counts.
Abdulaziz, I know you want to jump in. I'm going to let you, but first I just want to ask you, what is the feeling currently in Saudi Arabia and other GCC states, from what you know, about what potential action perhaps should be taken against Iran going forward?
In my opinion, I think this is the million-dollar question that I think a lot of the analysts have been asked in the past 2 days. You know, what is the threshold that will render some sort of measures to enter into an offensive reaction to or against Iran? And in my opinion, I think there is just no clear threshold. In my opinion, I think what is happening is a gradual process of maintaining restraint and then kind of gradually escalate, climbing the ladder of offensive, I would say, offensive defense, or probably forward defense here. Let me use an Iranian term. So what I would anticipate is the following. The duration of the war, alongside the intensity of the Iranian strikes on these infrastructures, will depend how far and how fast the escalation will up the ladder will be. In my opinion, I think the biggest weapon that we have in the Gulf states is restraint. We are, I think, clearly the most level-headed, most clear-eyed, and I think most disciplined leaders in the region. And I think what they don't want to do is they don't want to make a bad situation even worse. But this is, let me just say this, restraint does not necessarily mean passivity. And so if this continues, this will then lead into a situation that people will not want to join. Now, what is this situation? People are now saying, well, maybe the use and the facilitation of American bases, so they could use them against Iran. In my estimation, I won't think so. Not yet. Because of the things that I think Dr. Badr Saif mentioned earlier, the American Armada already amassed enough military might in the region to cause this much chaos and inflict this much damage on Iran. So I don't think we will revert to that just yet. I will think personally there will be a process of a gradual posturing of defense. I think there will be more air sorties. I think there will be more kind of projection of the use of the qualitative defensive capabilities. And I think this is where we're heading. What we don't want to do is to enter into a war that's not ours, even though we're on the front line of a war that's not ours. And the last point that I want to say is that one of the political objectives of this war is actually to have Netanyahu say, we finally got the Saudis, the GCC states to fight with us shoulder to shoulder against Iran. One of the targets of the Netanyahu approach is to really break this rapprochement process that was happening. Now, we did not allow him to do this in the 12-day war, but unfortunately, the Iranian reactions, the illegal ones on the GCC states, is helping go towards that very, very unwise place that we don't want to be in. So we're in a really tough situation.
Foad, I want to go back to something that Badr said a moment ago and get your reaction to it, because Badr was saying that Iran is following a scorched earth strategy. You said a few moments ago that Iran wants brotherly relationships with these neighboring countries. But I need to ask you, I mean, is Iran planning to burn all the bridges that they have with these regional neighbors? Or do they expect that they can actually repair relationships when this is done? Because Iran hasn't just struck, energy facilities and energy infrastructure sites in the region. They struck residential buildings in Bahrain, the Kuwaiti airport, a hotel in the UAE. Those are just some of the examples from the past few days. So how does Iran come back from that and try to build trust now?
I think Iran has been trying to build bridges, not burn bridges, build bridges with the neighborhood. There was no reason for many years after the Islamic Revolution for tense relationship with our neighbors. Both Saudi Arabia and Kuwait helped Saddam Hussein during the 8 years of imposed war on Iran. That was the wrong policy. I think the new leaders in these countries have realized that fighting Iran would be not in the interest of their respected countries. Iran agrees. This is a war zone now. We are losing 200-300 civilians on daily basis. Showing sympathy, as our brother Badr showed in the beginning of the program, is very useful when a neighbor. This is part of the Islamic teachings. When a neighbor is facing difficulties, other neighbors coming and helping would be a good gesture. There could be damages, since this is a war zone, there could be damages to these countries. Attacking US bases is legitimate military target for Iran. Iran is going to continue to do that because Iran wants to make sure there is enough cost to the United States. Otherwise, they will assassinate the new Iranian leader. If attacking Iran is cost-free, or if attacking Iran is relatively cost-free, they will continue attacking Iran every few months, which is not good for these countries. There could be some damages, unwanted damages to these countries. But the hope that we have is that the brothers in the neighborhood realize that Iran is fighting for Iran, and Iran is fighting for the neighborhood. Because if they can get away with killing Iranian leaders, disintegrating Iran, then the next target would be Turkey, then Pakistan, then these countries. So we need some understanding, some sympathy, a little bit of help if they can, and then we'll make sure that Americans and Israelis fail, and then we can repair relations and build more bridges as we go forward.
Badr, I'll come to you with a question in just a minute. Yeah, Abdulaziz, I see that you want to jump in. Please go ahead.
I'll just jump in quickly before Badr, if you may.
Yeah.
Just quickly, I think that Dr. Foad was talking about this understanding. This understanding was delivered by the Saudi defense minister in 2024 or even 2025, I think last year, to the late Supreme Leader Khamenei himself. And in that letter, he was actually saying exactly these things, that in fact, we agree that Israel is the spoiler in the region, and Israel is something that we all agree on. So I think, Dr. Foad, to be honest with you, we have already sought out and told and expressed this understanding of the situation. Our frustration is that with this ramifications that you're having, or the problems that you're having with Iran, you're spilling it over into us, the people that you sought an understanding with. This is not creating an understanding. You are unleashing your frustration on the brothers that you're claiming us to be. And this is not brotherly relations. And we still want to call for brotherly relations in the future. So this is what I'll say. I don't want to take too much of everyone else's time.
All right, Badr, I know you want to jump in. Please go ahead.
Quick comments on our brother from Iran. And I'm glad you mentioned Islamic teachings. You don't hit a Muslim country, especially in Ramadan. And we never hit Iran from our side. Regardless of all the claims that our colleagues in Iran make that those launched are coming from our Gulf states or airspaces, this is not accurate. And if you notice, the whole return to the past has been something that has haunted and kept the Iranian state and society from moving forward. We're in 2026. Why are we going back to the Iran-Iraq war? Let's move to the future. And by the way, that's what we're doing in the Gulf states. And that's what we're focused on. And we think that peace and prosperity can never be limited to us alone. It's shared across the board. And that's why, despite all the assets that we have and all the very strong capabilities that we've demonstrated in the last 4 days, in which the interception rates are among the highest in the world, by the way, this has also been linked up with restraint. And don't take restraint as weakness. This is not our war. Again, this is Israel and the US going at Iran, unfortunately. And this is for the Iranian state to go back at the culprits, to mix the papers up, to raise the cost, to think that this adds pressure on the Gulf for us to then deliver that pressure to the US. We've done that before, the war. We've tried our best. But we need to understand that we are not in control of US state, society, and institutions. We are, our own countries. We try to deliver what we can to protect our national interest and to see regional common stability. But at times we cannot reach that target. And I think the Iranians know that. So mixing up the papers will not serve them well now or in the long term.
Foad, I'm going to give you a chance to respond. You've had Badr and Abdulaziz both addressing you directly the last couple of minutes. Please go ahead.
Address it with respect, by the way.
We have had reports in the U.S. press, Axios, Washington Post, reporting that Saudi Arabia is encouraging United States to attack Iran and overthrow Iran's government. No one in Iran has believed that. We understand that these American news organizations generally get leaks from Israeli sources. They want to create tension.
The Saudi spokesperson rebuked that, Dr. Foad. The Saudi spokesperson rebuked that.
Yes.
And 2 days ago, sir.
Yes.
He rebuked that, and he said
that's
that
why
was
we
never
didn't
our
believe
policy.
it.
And our policy was always to actually achieve a diplomatic deal.
I'm impressed by
Iranians don't believe that.
Outlets since the beginning. You should refer to local outlets in the Gulf. What we're saying to you, we don't need to go to the West. We need to deal with one another to get our issues sorted.
Foad, go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. People in, yes. People in Iran did not believe that because I think Israelis they managed to use American soldiers in their attacks on Iran. They want to use Kuwaiti and Saudi soldiers in their attacks against Iran. So, as I said, Iran did not believe that. Trump is saying that. Every other day, Trump is saying that the neighboring countries are encouraging him to attack Iran. Iran didn't believe that. Iran doesn't believe most of the things that Trump says. The hope that we have is that the United States stops this illegal war against Iran. They started it. Iran has no other choice but to use the capacity that the country has to inflict cost to the United States, not our neighbors. The bases, American bases, happen to be in these countries. Unfortunately, when U.S. designated Iran's military as a terrorist organization, Iran designated U.S. military as a terrorist organization. So we are fighting terrorism, and these terrorists are located in this part of the world. And the hope that everybody, our brothers in the Persian Gulf states, the hope that we have is that they understand that Iran is fighting for them as well. I hope that they understand the cost that they may endure, because in a war zone sometimes missiles go into wrong places. But the cost that they would have is going to be much less if Iran wins in comparison to the cost they will have if Israelis dominate this part of the world.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's just that
we're
about to run out of time. And Abdulaziz, I saw that you wanted to react, but I need to ask you one last question. Please, if you could just keep it brief. What happens now from your vantage point when it comes to the Gulf states' ties with the U.S.? I mean, will the relationship between the Gulf states and the U.S. change? Will the Gulf states trust the U.S. less after these actions?
I think one of the grievances that that Saudis and others in the region have with the United States is the fact that the United States' actions, as short as they may be, will leave us to inherit the strategic ramifications of those actions. So this is why we have not wanted such a war to happen. So what I do anticipate is the fact that I think, alluding to what Dr. Badr Saif mentioned earlier, is that we did not have much influence on the decision-making process nor the whims of Donald Trump. I think this is clear. What we will have to do is increase our diplomacy in Washington, D.C. to help mitigate any negative whims that will affect our security in the region, just like initiating a war on Israel's behalf, which is what the United States said, and to probably try to leverage some of the political weight that they have in Washington, D.C. for the benefit of the region. And I think this is what I meant by changing the mode of diplomacy. We are going to see more of a proactive diplomacy there. I hope so, at least. And we will be better if we work as a collective, as a GCC, and not really as different parties in the GCC in Washington, D.C.
All right, we've run out of time, so we're going to have to leave the conversation there. Thanks so much to our guests, Abdulaziz Alghashian, Foad, Izadi, and Badr al-Saif. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Mohammed Jamjoom, and the whole team here, bye for now.